From the outside, Halle Bailey seemed to be living a fairy tale, a Disney princess in real life, with beauty, a voice that silences rooms, and a career blooming before the world's eyes. But as the chapters unfolded behind the scenes, it became painfully clear that her real-life love story may have mirrored something far darker than anyone could have ever imagined. Halle chose DDG, a man with a public reputation for clout chasing, online messiness, and increasingly alarming allegations. And while many asked why she would align herself, let alone have a child with someone like that, the answer, as always, lies beneath the surface. But before we dive deep into today's video, grab your favorite goodies from rrgsnacks.com, like our bacon jerky, butter toffee peanuts, and gummy sour peach rings. Our earliest emotional attachments, especially those tied to family systems, shape who we are drawn to, who we tolerate, and who feels familiar. Often, what feels familiar feels safe, even when it isn't. This is the heart of attachment theory, which suggests that our bonds in adulthood often mirror the emotional climate of our upbringing. If a person grew up with chaos, unpredictability, or conditional love, they may seek out those very same patterns in their romantic life, believing that if they can win love under those circumstances, it will finally heal the parts of them that were never fully seen as a child. For Halle, who has always presented herself as grounded, poised, and softly spoken, the idea that she would link up with someone like DDG puzzled fans. DDG is known for his antics, his online trolling, and his frequent jabs at exes. It's hard to believe that Halle, who was an early fan of his YouTube channel and his music, was unaware of the emotional manipulation and gaslighting he had previously been accused of. But even if she wasn't aware, she was surely warned by the public over and over again.
My grandmama used to say, if I tell you that a rooster dips snuff, you need to check under his wing for a snuff box. In other words, I ain't telling you no lie. And now if I tell you that he dips snuff, you may as well check for the evidence, because there's a snuff box on his person somewhere. So, Halle, if people is telling you that the man is no good for you, you need to listen. Anyway, let's just continue to listen together, besties. This is a mess.
So let's say she did know about his past, and she chose to pursue a relationship with him anyway. Was it naivety? Wishful thinking? Maybe on the surface, but what if, deep down, she wasn't trying to change him at all? What if her subconscious had already made the decision for her long before she ever realized it? Sometimes we're not consciously choosing chaos, we're remembering it. We're gravitating towards something that feels familiar, not because it's good for us, but because it mirrors what we witnessed growing up. The energy, the emotional temperature, the dynamic. It's not logical, it's neurological. Let's go a bit deeper into this by examining Halle's roots. In September 2007, her father, Doug Bailey, was accused of putting his hands on her mom numerous times. He was arrested and charged with 2 counts of family violence battery, simple battery, cruelty to children in the 3rd degree, and disorderly conduct. The disorderly conduct charge was added because he allegedly acted in a tumultuous manner after placing his wife in reasonable fear of her life, limb, or health.
Mr. Bailey.
According to court documents, his criminal case was put on hold for 9 months so he could complete a domestic intervention program. Additionally, he was ordered to have no contact with her mother. Upon completion of the domestic program, the charges against him were dismissed. The family got past the incident and eventually moved to Los Angeles so Halle and her sister Chloe could pursue careers in the entertainment industry. So sure, the family got past it. However, the events occurred when Halle was a child. She was young enough to absorb the energy of the household, but old enough to remember tension, raised voices, or fear, even if it was never directed toward her. In addition to that, children do not need to witness abuse to be affected by it. The emotional atmosphere in a household marked by violence is often just as damaging as the violence itself. As for the relationship with their parents today, well, her sister Chloe revealed in 2022 that she's no longer close with their parents. However, she has a tight bond with her godmother, whom she calls Mommy. Some sources also state that Chloe fired her dad as her manager. As for Halle, she told Glamour magazine she's very close to her parents and didn't move out of their home until after she finished filming The Little Mermaid. In a 2022 interview with Variety, Halle said she channeled her bond with her dad in her role as Ariel. She said, "I would always talk about how my dad is like a mirror of King Triton. I just pulled from my experience with my own father, how deep that love is and how strong and protective they get." And yet, that same deep bond, the one she honored so openly, may have unknowingly created a blueprint that shaped her romantic choices in ways even she couldn't see coming. This is where the subconscious plays its most dangerous trick, because even as Halle praised her father's love, and even as she described his protectiveness with warmth, there's still a shadow underneath that ideal, a history, a memory stored not just in her mind, but in her body. Her father's past doesn't align with the dreamy Disney version of fatherhood she described, but it's part of her truth, and the subconscious mind never forgets. This is what's called an internalized contradiction, the emotional dissonance that occurs when a person we love also causes us pain. The human brain, especially in children, will often split that person into two, the protector and the punisher, the savior and the source of fear. But as we grow up, those halves don't always integrate. Instead, they live quietly beneath the surface, creating a confusing emotional pattern where we associate love with both safety and volatility. So what happens when that child becomes a woman? She seeks out love that feels emotionally familiar, not necessarily emotionally healthy. She might say she's looking for a kind, stable partner, but on a deeper level, her nervous system may be more responsive to someone whose love comes with mood swings, control, or emotional inconsistency. That's the heartbreaking juxtaposition at play here. Halle may consciously honor her father, speak of his protectiveness, and use their bond as a creative muse. But on a subconscious level, the early exposure to instability, however brief or minimized, could have trained her to bond with men who reflect both the loving and the dangerous sides of him. And that's where DDG comes in. He may not have reminded her of the man her father is now, but of the emotional chaos her younger self once absorbed. His dominance, his public flare-ups, his need for control. These behaviors might not have been red flags to her nervous system. They might have been comforting and familiar. Even though consciously she could name them as toxic, subconsciously they echoed something unresolved yet recognizable. This doesn't mean Halle was reenacting her past intentionally. Quite the opposite. The subconscious doesn't use logic or language. It uses emotion and memory. So while her conscious mind was celebrating her father's love, her deeper emotional instincts might have been repeating an old pattern, trying to rewrite a chapter of her childhood by choosing a partner who resembled its most complex parts. It's a tragic loop many women find themselves in, especially daughters of men who were both loved and feared. They don't realize they're reenacting until it's too late. They think they're in a new story, but they're still living inside the emotional echoes of the old one.
Ooh, that's a word right there.
In Halle's case, DDG likely offered something that activated this dynamic. He may have seemed exciting, dominant, and protective, like when he came to the rescue to claim she was disrespected in a racially motivated incident at a nail salon. DDG has made headlines for reasons that range from petty to deeply disturbing. But in the early stages of their relationship, he likely mirrored Halle's emotional needs. Abusers don't show up in wolf costumes. They show up as charmers, with grand gestures and a constant presence. For someone like Halle, young, in love, and perhaps still healing from silent wounds, DDG's confidence may have felt like security. He may have created an emotional vacuum that made her feel wanted in a way that temporarily quieted old insecurities. This is what psychologists refer to as love bombing. It's an overwhelming flood of affection used to establish dependency.
Where's Halo at?
What do you mean? He's sleeping, he's in bed RN?
Give me my son back.
What? Why are you acting like this? What have I ever done for you to act like I'm some sort of monster that would keep your son from you?
Because you don't know how to respect me and you disrespect me in public over a Usher concert. Where is my son at? I'm taking my son.
When DDG began to show darker traits such as jealousy, public disrespect, and controlling behavior, it likely didn't feel wrong to Halle at first. It probably felt like love taking on a complicated shape. Victims of emotionally manipulative relationships often defend the very people who harm them because they are emotionally entangled in a cycle of reinforcement and withdrawal. When DDG would disrespect Halle online or allow his fans to do so, and then reel her back in with apologies, gifts, or private sweetness, it reinforced the trauma bond. It's the exact same pattern that happens in homes with intermittent abuse. It goes from tension to explosion, and then to the honeymoon, and it's addictive. Now, let's talk about identity. Halle, despite her fame, may not have had the space to fully explore her individuality outside of her sister Chloe, her family, or the Disney machine. In family systems theory, this is referred to as enmeshment. It's a lack of emotional boundaries between family members that can make it difficult to know where you end and others begin. When someone grows up in a tight-knit, high-performing family, they often struggle with autonomy. Choosing a partner who is seen as outside the box can feel like an act of rebellion, freedom, or independence. DDG may have represented that contrast. He was messy, brash, and bold. Perhaps he was everything Halle never was. And psychologically, we often seek partners who embody parts of ourselves that we feel unable to express. If Halle was the good girl, the peacemaker, the artist with the soft voice, DDG's chaotic energy might have felt like a shortcut to accessing her shadow self, the part of her that wanted to feel fierce, wanted, and untouchable. This dynamic is not uncommon in women who are forced to mature quickly. They often suppress parts of themselves to survive, only to seek them later in reckless or emotionally unsafe partners. Halle's decision to stay, even after public and private red flags, suggests emotional confusion, not stupidity. According to a 2019 study in the Journal of Social and Personal Relationships, women with a history of witnessing or experiencing domestic trauma are more likely to misinterpret early warning signs in relationships and are more likely to internalize blame when those relationships become toxic. They are also more likely to isolate themselves from friends and family to protect the illusion of love. And let's not forget sweet little Halo. Once a child is involved, everything intensifies. Many women stay longer than they should, trying to protect the child, the image of the family, or the hope that things will improve. Halle likely experienced immense emotional conflict. On one hand, she was now a mother, responsible for a life. On the other hand, she may have felt trapped by the escalating dysfunction. In recent court documents, she described violent behavior from DDG while they exchanged their child, and alleged that he physically assaulted her. These are not the actions of a man who ever deserved to be in her orbit, let alone her life. But trauma does not care about logic. It cares about patterns, and unless they are broken with intention, they repeat. There is also the issue of shame. Halle is not just a woman. She is a brand, a Disney princess, a role model, and with that image comes an invisible leash. How does one admit that their life doesn't match the dream? How does one say, "I'm hurting," when the world is expecting a happily ever after? How does someone quietly admit that the public was correct without receiving more backlash from the people who are quick to say, "I told you so"? Shame keeps people silent, and silence is where abuse thrives. As we watch this unfold, the temptation is to say that Halle should have known better. However, that statement lacks empathy, and more importantly, it lacks understanding of how trauma reshapes the nervous system. Halle may not have chosen DDG because she didn't love herself. She may have chosen him because she was still trying to heal. Love, when influenced by unresolved trauma, becomes a battlefield. We choose familiar pain because it gives us the illusion of control. But that's the trap. You don't heal the past by repeating it. You heal by choosing differently, and that's the hard part. For Halle, the hope now is that she sees the cycle for what it is, that she names the dysfunction, not as a reflection of her worth, but as a legacy she is no longer willing to carry. Her story is not over. It's not ruined. but it is raw. And like so many women before her, famous or not, she will have to decide whether her son will grow up watching his mother survive or watching her rebuild. Because love isn't supposed to hurt. Love doesn't punch or gaslight or isolate. Love doesn't destroy your spirit in the name of family. And most of all, love doesn't mirror the pain you saw in your childhood. It rewrites it. Whether Halle knows it or not, this may be the most powerful chapter of her life. Not the version written by Disney, framed in fairy dust and tied up with a happy ending, but the raw, aching chapter. The one where she's rocking her baby in one arm and piecing her soul back together with the other. This isn't the story of a helpless princess waiting to be saved. This is the moment she becomes her own rescuer. The moment she chooses herself, not because it's easy, but because it's the only way to move forward. Because her son is watching. Because she remembers the little girl inside her who saw too much, stayed too quiet, and deserved so much better. Maybe this isn't the love story she imagined, but maybe it's the one that will set her free.